りがとう。どうもありがとうございます。Translate that. Okay, so hi. This feels very formal for having 7 people. And I have to admit, I'm very relieved. Oh, testing. Test. The eagle has landed. Hopefully my Canadian accent is understandable. Right. This does feel strange to have the microphone with such a small audience, but I'm partly very relieved that there isn't a whole room of very drunk people, because I was scared having a 7 o'clock masterclass that it was going to be, now that's fewer. I can handle 7 drunks. Good. So very quickly, guys. Hi, I'm Sam. My friends call me Dr. Whisky. My wife calls me Whisky Crazy because I love whiskey. And I assume if you're here, you feel the same way. How many people, is this their first whiskey show? It's your first Paris whiskey, but first whiskey show ever. None of you. See? Nerds. Wonderful. And how many people have been to whiskey shows in other countries? Yeah, okay. No, okay. And who's ever made a pilgrimage to Islay? Nerds again. Okay, so no Islay, but you've been to whiskey show before. Oh, you're just lying. Are you just okay? That's fine. I can't. It's a small group. You're going to get singled out. So I love whiskey. I love the way it tastes, the way it makes me feel, everything about it. The people you meet, and one of the most important things about whiskey is that social element. So when you see old woodcuts and old paintings of the people in Scotland making whiskey illegally in the hills, it's never one person. It's always a group, because it was a family or a communal activity. It was a farming activity, much like wine making or grappa making or cognac making, eau de vie making. Whiskey making has that same tradition. And so whiskey really is to be shared and enjoyed. So that's the first thing I'd like to do today, is make sure that you're drinking, make sure that we're having fun. I think an audience in France is a wonderful, respectful audience of spirit. Many whiskey shows that I have worked at before, people come up to the stands and they say, "Give me your oldest," or "What's your newest?" We're here, having walked around quite a lot and worked on our stand as well. People are very respectful and they come up and say, "Tell me your story." And that's brilliant. That's what whiskey really is, so rich with stories and the respect of the drink. So, I'm Sam. I used to work with Balvenie, with David Stewart, who's the malt master of Balvenie and of Glenfiddich for a long time. And then I stopped working there to start working with Atom Brands. Atom Brands are the people who make That Boutique Whiskey Company, which maybe you've seen. It's the labels that have illustrations. It's an independent bottler. And if there's ever a whiskey that you've liked from them, it's limited and it can never be repeated. So one of the first things I wanted to do as the head of whiskey at Atom Brands was see if we could make things that could be repeated, so that if you own a bar or if you're a whiskey drinker, you can buy something, love it, and know that you can get it again next month or next Christmas or next Father's Day or whatever the situation is. And the 2 styles of whiskey that most whiskey drinkers are attracted to are sherried style, my friend from the Sherry Museum, sherried style whiskeys, and peaty style whiskeys. You're a peat fan. All right, good. Most whiskey drinkers are, and they fall into those categories. So we thought the first 2 we should make should be those 2. So we're going to start with darkness. And I thought, because usually the audience at Paris Whiskey Live is very nerdy, we would try the evolution of darkness. So the whiskey that's in the middle of the front, that's the whiskey that I buy. We don't own a distillery. So you often see people talk about whiskey casks and say hand-selected casks. which is bullshit. I don't know how you hand select a cask. That just means taking your hand and putting it on some wood. No, that doesn't happen. Hand selection is bullshit. But we work with a company to get exactly the kind of spirit that we want. And that's this. In the middle, 8-year-old whiskey from Speyside. Speyside is the world's favorite type of Scotch whiskey. Many of the big brands of Scotch whiskey, Glenfiddich, Glenlivet, Macallan, come from this region, so the world likes that flavor. It's the heart of the blends like Johnny Walker and Chivas. Speyside is the heart of those blends. So it's a flavor that people like. This distillery you can see because it's cloudy. If you look at your whiskey, that cloudiness is exactly what I want, because that cloudiness is richness and oil and flavor and funk. And that happens because this is from a distillery that I cannot name, but it's from a distillery that has worm tubs. And that's a method of condensing the spirit that's old school and leaves a lot of the fatty esters and flavors inside the drink. So that means when I put it into other wood, the spirit's going to stand up to it. It's going to not get overpowered and pushed down. You'll still taste the spirit, and that's very, very important if we're going to do the darkening step. So that's how it starts. And let's have a sip in the nose. Sweet. If you have any thoughts, yell it out loud. Texture. You can feel that texture. And this is at 46%. A whiskey should not be cloudy at 46%, but this one is because it's mucky. It's from a worm tub distillery in Speyside, and that's exactly what we want for darkness, okay? So darkness then, what does that mean? It's the darkening process. So the whiskey starts that color, but then we put it into barrels so that it starts to take on a new color. For darkness, our special technique is to custom make these small sherry casks in Spain called octaves. A normal sherry butt is 500 liters, and an octave that we're buying is only 64 liters. So about an eighth of the size, that's why it's called an octave. But it's actually almost 20 times as much surface area mathematically. So we get a really big kick of wood exposure into the whiskey. So when we put that clear spirit in, after only 3 months, you end up with the glass at number 1. Furthest left. So yeah, sir, exactly how it look, and you see the color difference, but you also really begin to see what happens to the aroma and flavor. What type of sherry matters? We use Oloroso sherry. We want the big fig, prune, dry fruit, orange, marmalade, tobacco flavors that you get from that beautiful grapes that they use, Palominos, and have it in there so that we can not just get the color and the darkness, but also see if we can add layers of flavor on top of the big, rich Speyside whiskey that's at the heart of it. And that's only 3 months. Now, here in the show, there's a guy named Don Livermore, who's a distiller from Canada, like I am. I live in the UK, but I'm from Canada. And he always says that whiskey only needs 100 days to get its color. So after 3 months, most of the color is already there. Maybe you agree. If you compare number 1 to number 2, number 1 is 3 months, number 2 is 6 months. So the color's very similar, I think. And so I agree with Don. He's a scientist. I trust him. But the aroma, the texture, the flavors, quite different. So oxygen has been acting. And we always talk in whiskey about wood and the type of cask and how important wood is. And people don't talk enough about oxygen. In sherry, people understand the importance of oxygen and air and yeast and the floor. That's very important to the maturation of wine and of sherry wines in particular. Whiskey, it's the same. If we leave that whiskey exposed to air a bit longer, more complex changes begin to happen. Yes, most of the color's there. It's already in the spirit. It's already been added to that 8-year-old Speyside. But the other flavors and the other complexities are coming only with time. You can't cheat that. You can't put it in a smaller barrel and put lasers in it. and make anything different. You have to just wait. So we see the difference. They're strong. I should have warned you that. I'm sorry. They're very strong whiskey. So if you'd like to add water, there's water around you. Please do. But there is, I hope, a massive difference. I was told very clearly we're only allowed to have 4 whiskeys. But the team here, thank you so much, let us have 5. Because I like fucking breaking the rules. Fucking break the rules. Yes, all right. Come on, people, help me out. I thought you'd be more drunk. I was ready for a rowdy crowd. I did ask for it. He's okay. He was joking. He was joking. Oh my God, the security's coming. It's okay. Sorry. Bram. Good. So now, that's none of what you've tasted is the final whiskey. Let's go to number 3 on your mat. So the top right, yeah. That is what we now have just released 2 weeks ago. I'm really proud of it. So I've made a whiskey, yay! And it's out, and people, thank you. And it's got a very warm reaction so far. The first batch is all gone. It's all gone to different parts of the world. So that's exciting. We're making more all the time because we have to let that whiskey sit for 6 months in the wood. So we're always a bit ahead with the filling. We bottle it at 47.8. Does anybody know why? The alcohol strength is 47.8. Anybody know why? Talisker is 45 something. 45.8. Oh, okay, fine. You want to shake your head at me? I'm Dr. Whiskey, don't you know? All right, I'm going to fucking look it up. It's close, though. It's Balvenie. All the single barrels of Balvenie are 47.8. Yeah, so the single barrel 12, 15, and 25 are 47.8. And when I worked with Balvenie and I worked with David Stewart, I always asked why. And he said it's a very good strength that will keep the clarity of the spirit and allow it to be drunk neat. And if someone wants to add water, they can add water and it still stays above 40. So it's a perfect strength for the connoisseur who wants to have it straight and also the person who just wants to drink. It's great with soda water, too, in a highball. I highly recommend that. So that's the final darkness, and we launched it only a couple weeks ago. And like I said, I'm not really acting like you, but I'm pretty excited. Do we like it? Oh, good. Yeah, that's the number one fan. Even though you're a peat guy, wow. Even though you're a peat whiskey lover. And you just, again, if you grab that one in the middle and just compare it to the final whiskey, they're roughly the same strength. And you see a massive color difference and a very different addition of flavors. But the core whiskey still is there. And that's very important to always protect the core style and not overpower it. Pretty. It's a lovely picture. Uncovering intensity, because it is about that. It's higher strength. It's big sherry. It's not subtle. It's not delicate. It's in your face, like Glenfarclas 105 or Aberlour Rabuna. Yeah, please. How old? The base whiskey is 8 years old, and then it's plus 6 months, at least 6 months, at least 3 months actually. But right now, we're way ahead. So we have 6 months and more whiskey in there. So it's 6 months in the sherry. So minimum is 8 years old. As time goes on, I do have some casks of 12-year-old sherry that I'm going to have to use because they're just sitting there and I can't name them. We bought them from the same person, so I might as well start pouring it in to this. So we'll probably add some 12-year-old as well. So cool? Happy? I'm on schedule. This is amazing. We're doing 5 whiskeys in 30 minutes. I feel very good about that. So how about our next whiskey then? This is also a drinking whiskey. It's yes, you can sit and write your tasting notes, and there's a million out there that you could go and update your blog and get your notes and ask the distiller how it's made. But sometimes you just want a whiskey to be a whiskey. And this is what my father says. This is many people I know who collect whiskey. Dave Broom is here. Serge Valentin, Whiskey Fun, is here. And they use a similar phrase, when whiskey was whiskey, meaning no one cared about Ardbeg's new discovery and the new name of some new product. They didn't care. All they wanted was the bottle and the contents of that bottle. So this whiskey is all about getting back to what's in the glass. And how do we do that? With a name that makes you say, what the fuck is that? Can everyone see that? That's a great question, Bram. Thanks. How much? Lyndsay. Kind of sounds familiar, but also I've never heard of that. And if you see it on a rack of whiskeys in the shop, it looks familiar, but also unknown. And when you pick it up, if you pick it up, and that's fine if you don't, because I think that style is not for everybody. And whiskey's not for everybody, especially Islay whiskey. And it says here, hi, this is the part where we're meant to entice you, dear drinker, with tales of a magical island of Islay. The Islay pilgrimage of any discerning whiskey drinker is paved with provenance, heritage, and of course, peat smoke-breathing dragons. But you know that already. We've chosen to focus on what matters most, the contents of your glass, a great story, and of course, the ferry timetable. If you've ever been to Islay, that's all people talk about is what time and which ferry they're going to get off the island or to get onto the island. The ferry timetable is a vital bit of information. So it tells you nothing. Nothing about the whiskey. The website tells you nothing. So stop talking about the website. Stop talking about the bottle. Pour it and put it in your glass and share it with friends. Dave Broom joined us on Islay when we shared it with people for the first time. And he loved it, wrote about it, loved the attitude of it, loved the party we threw, and said it's a whiskey that you just gather a glass, gather your friends, throw the cork away. That's the kind of whiskey it should be. So that's in your glass number 4. 10-year-old Islay whiskey. Lyndsay was a thief. Lyndsay was, she lost her husband after right after the third child was born, and she had to steal sheep from neighboring farms to keep the family alive and to keep some sort of income. And I don't know how many sheep thieves you know, but this is probably the most famous sheep thief in Islay's history, Lyndsay. None of that's true, of course, but I hope it sounds like it could be a good story. And I hope you make up a story about it too sometime. Tell your friends some bullshit story. I tried this whiskey. Lyndsay was, used to be the politician, used to be the mayor of Bowmore. Lyndsay was a doctor who used to dig up bodies and eat their hearts. Make it up. Who cares? Because it doesn't matter. Because it says right on there, and this is another thing that many whiskey lovers like, when a whiskey does what it says on the tin. And right here it says, Islay 10-year-old. These letters, Lyndsay, are an anagram of Islay 10-year-old. So it's been telling you the whole time what it is. 10-year-old single malt from Islay. Have a nose. Hope you like it. It's 46%. The smoke-breathing dragon is here on the front if you want to see it. The mixture of casks, we used those small octave casks I mentioned before. We put this Islay distillery at 10 years old into these casks for about a year. These small sherry casks. It gets the big sherry flavor, really dark color, big sherry flavor. And we use about this much, 25% for every bottle of the heavily sherried. We use 5% of character casks, I call it. That's where I take this distillery and I put it into barrels that used to hold Ardbeg, Macduff, Banff, weird, different distilleries than this one to try and pull the flavor a little bit away from this distillery. And then the rest is American Oak Hogshead, 10-year-old, direct from the distiller. Cool? If you have to know what's inside, but it doesn't matter. What matters if you like it. Do you want another glass? Do you want to share it with your friends? Do you not want it? That's fine. We had a reviewer the other day give it 9 out of 10. I was very happy, but they spelt the name wrong. So and then I had another reviewer give it 4 out of 10 and then totally missed the point. So I can take the 4 out of 10, I can take the 9 out of 10, but at least have the respect to read the fucking label. It tells you how to spell it right there. It's right there, journalist. Good. 30 minutes, I think, right? We're done. Oh, that was so easy. I mean, honestly, if this room was full, you know how annoying that would have been? That would have been so slow. This is amazing. I loved it. So I'd like to sing a song for you now.
Yeah, do it. Guitar.
Not. Thanks a lot for coming, guys. Thanks a lot for all your work today setting this up. I know it's probably a pain in the ass having to do this over and over and over again since 2 o'clock. It's a very well-run show. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for having us. Airlight, Lyndsay in Darkness, Sam Simmons. Good night.